Welcome to the latest edition of Tom and Terry, and I'm joined by the wonderful Tom Stenson. How are we doing, Tom?
Very good, thank you, Terry. How are you?
All better seeing your smiley face. You want to just take a moment to remind people who you are? What's your role at the NJC?
I am Deputy Chair and Head of Training at the ADINJC.
So I am fairly new on the committee, but enjoying it, finding out more about the inner workings as we go. But this is another edition of Tom and Terry, where we find something interesting to talk about, hopefully. And today we are talking about Road Safety Week. Now, Road Safety Week is run by Break, which is the road safety charity, and their primary role, I suppose, is they work with families of people who've lost their lives in car crashes. And every week in November, they have Road Safety Week, and it is the 16th of November. It kicks off. And I'm just going to read what Break have said about it this time around. And they say, this Road Safety Week, we want to make sure that every time we get in a vehicle, we are as safe as possible, whoever we are and however we travel, because safe vehicles save lives. So that is their theme for this Road Safety Week, Tom. It's safe vehicles. But before we get into that, I want to ask you your thoughts on Road Safety Week, because as instructors, we know we should be kind of focusing on road safety quite regularly. So, do you think that Road Safety Week we should be taking it up a notch, or should we almost doing it to as max anyway every week?
Yes, I think it should be to the max, shouldn't it? I think unfortunately we are still an industry that is focused perhaps more on the passing of the test than actually what comes after. Um, I I think you and I are very similar. I think we'd strive to be in a situation where driving instructors are classed as road safety professionals. I don't think we're there yet. But we should be doing it on every lesson. We should be doing it on every opportunity. We should do it on every YouTube, bit of content that we do because that that's the goal, really, isn't it? It's not how many people I've had pass this, pass the test this year. It's actually what have I done to prevent somebody having to go to break or break having to go to them and say, look, what can we do to try and help?
It's just like we mentioned in break there, and it's like we shouldn't need break.
No.
Break shouldn't need to be existed, and I'm sure that if you ask anyone there, they don't want to exist. I'm sure because
Mm.
people shouldn't be dying on the roads, and I think I agree with you largely. I think maybe where I'd throw a slight counter to that is, I think this week is almost an excuse to make it a little bit more fun. And I appreciate we're talking an element of road death there, which is never fun. But like even with Break, what they're doing this year, it's around their theme, their charity raising event is having a brew, basically go and
Yeah.
make a brew or have some kind of tea party event and raise funds that way.
Not while you're driving. I just want to
No,
point that out.
no, yes, not for driving instructors. Generally, have some kind of tea party and raise funds. So I do think with stuff like this, it's almost an excuse to almost take a different look on it.
Yeah.
So for those instructors out there that are like you mentioned that are those road safety professionals, because there are some that really push us all the time, maybe this is the opportunity to take that different approach and say, okay, cool, maybe every lesson that week they do have a 5 minute break, or they do the Costa drive through or whatever, and while they're doing that, I don't know, each student donates £1 or something. Maybe you raise 20 quid that week, and again, imagine if 1,000 instructors did that. That's a good chunk of money
Yeah.
going towards it. So do you think there's ways that we can do what you said and then build upon it for this week to make it a bit more fun, a bit more special?
Yeah, and I think that's the good thing about these types of events that come around annually, is that we can kind of highlight it a little bit more. I like kind of your idea there, and I think there are loads of great ideas of even if it is just, we're going to spend 10 minutes buying our learner a cup of tea and we're going to talk about road safety at that point because this is our opportunity. We'll just have a quick chat over a brew and absolutely brilliant. Obviously, I just have to say it has to be Yorkshire tea because no other tea is allowed. Um, but why are we not doing it? We've got a great opportunity now in November the 16th to spend that week to try and make it a bit more of an effort. Have you got anything specifically planned that you think you're going to be doing?
I was considering doing a bit of a tour, every day, going to see a different instructor to have a brew with that instructor, and I wasn't quite sure how the fundraising gets in with that. It feels like a bit of an excuse just for me to go drive in and have a brew, but it's raising awareness in terms of learners. I think I quite like the idea of stopping for coffee or a tea or whatever, and again, I'm not 100% sure how the fundraising comes to that. Maybe there's a way of I'll buy you the brew, but you donate the cost of the brew I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a way to do that. But I think the more important thing from us in terms of lessons is to take that time to have that conversation. And maybe there's a different conversation to have here because we don't always have the conversation around road death on lessons.
Mm.
We tend to keep it around learning and that side of it. So maybe that's a good opportunity there. In terms of social media, I think that's a big one. I don't have the biggest social following for my driving school anymore, but I think there's scope for that. And I think I would also take an opportunity to challenge anyone out there that does have a big social media following, driving instructor wise, that claims to be a road safety professional to actually do it because you're going to get less views, you're going to get less likes talking about this stuff, but you'll probably make a bigger benefit. But
Yeah.
what about you, Tom? What's planned?
Um, I think doing things like this, getting more awareness. Our driving school that I own, we're going to be doing a week's worth of videos from The Honest Truth. So we're getting learners to kind of talk through their aspects of the truths and what the benefits are for them to talk more about the road safety than doing things to pass tests. It's not necessarily about raising money at that point, but it is raising awareness. And I think that's in an ideal world, we'd love, and I'm sure Brake would love it, to have lots of money raised. But I think raising awareness is also a good thing for it.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, raising money is going to support brake, but raising awareness will hopefully reduce the need for brake. So I
Mm.
think both of those things kind of counter each other. But what about Road Safety Week in general? Are you kind of a fan of this stuff, or do you almost view it as like, because the other example is fast forward to March. I forget the date. I think it's your birthday, Tom. Driving instructor day. It's a little bit of a just a thing that was created, but do you see it as a fad, or do you see it as yes, this is worthwhile, or do you see it as no, we shouldn't need this, it should be every day?
No, because I think it kind of brings a little bit more highlight to it. There's lots of these kind of events that happen where actually it is a big thing. People are doing stuff anyway throughout the year, and I'm sure lots of good driving instructors are out there and they're concentrating on road safety. But having that little bit more awareness of it for that week, I do think is a good thing.
Yeah. But as we say, it's about safe vehicles. That's kind of the theme this time. And I was looking through what Broker said, and I find this quite interesting what they say about safe vehicles. Because they say safe vehicles are designed to prevent road crashes and protect people inside and outside the vehicle if a crash does happen. So safe vehicles prevent crashes. They protect people inside and outside the vehicle. They manage driver safety. They're roadworthy, and they record crashes as well. So for those that aren't aware, safe vehicles is one part of the safe system, the five pillars, which I'm desperately racking my mind for the other four. Let's see, safe road users, safe roads, post-crash care, safe speeds, and
Yeah,
then safe vehicles. So how do we bring safe vehicles into driving lessons, Tom?
I think I'm going from experience here. I think lots of people do already do this from the kind of the basics of the show and tell questions, something that we mentioned earlier. But I think with more modern vehicles now becoming the way they are, I know that there is this small number of instructors who feel that actually, as instructors, learners aren't going to go out and buy brand new vehicles with more ADAS features. I disagree. I think more and more vehicles are becoming like it. I've got an 11-year-old vehicle that's got quite a few ADAS features. Um, and it's so important that we move with the times because we may get to a point where we can't necessarily improve Education, I disagree with that, but we may get to a point where we can't improve education anymore. But what else can we improve? We can make the road safer, we can make vehicles safer. I think the issue does come with some people is, does that bring complacency?
It does. I've spoken to Professor Nick Reed about this, who's very much autonomous vehicle specialist. That's his whole doctorate, I think it was around that. And it's like the more technologically advanced we get, the more complacent people get. And I think that's a balance that we have to address as instructors. That this technology is there to help save lives,
Yeah,
but we shouldn't, same way we shouldn't need brake, we shouldn't rely on this technology. We want to use the technology to help us with this rather than that. But in fact, I do want to come back to the ADAS thing. That's what we do. I want to touch on the other aspect you said, which was the show me, tell me questions. Because I think for me, this is the big one, and it's the easy in, because I'm sure every instructor covers the show me, tell me questions, and I'm sure a lot of instructors cover them as show me, tell me questions. And I'm sure that most learners want to learn the show me, tell me questions because it's part of the test. But I think there's a way to reframe that. I think if we can go, even if we talk about them as show me, tell me questions, there's a way to reframe them as like safety critical stuff.
yeah,
I think an obvious example here is the tread depth on the tires and the tires themselves. We were talking before about this, and there's very, very few learners that when they go and watch that video from the DVSA, or they read the description or whatever, and it says essential three quarters of the tire, very few people know what that means.
yeah,
It's not worded, I mean, it's probably worded correctly, but it doesn't make sense. So why not hold up at side of the road, have your car wheels turned so you can actually see the tyre, get out and talk about the tyre, show
yeah,
them what the central three quarters is, show them why that's important, show them with the tread depth gauge how to check that, show them, what the little, I can't remember what's called, but the little grooves are that go across, show them how to check for damage, talk to them about the fact that 1.6 is pretty poor when it comes
yeah,
to a tread depth, and really you want to be looking at changing it when it gets below 3, and explain that when it gets below 3, it doesn't disperse water as well. Now, every student you talk to isn't going to buy into that necessarily, but some will. And
yeah.
that they're the students that you're going to help make safer. And I think that I just use that example there of the tires and the tread depth. They will buy into that. I don't think I've ever had a student that said, no, I don't want to talk about this, partly because it's a show me, tell me question, but also partly because most of them are like, oh, I didn't know that. So do you think that is a good in? That will show me, tell me question. And do you think reframing it kind of, as I've suggested there, is an important way to go?
No, I think a lot of what we talk about, it can very easily be focused on you need to just know these for passing your test. And okay, you could go in there on a driving test and just say that you don't know any, and it's not going to have that much of a negative impact. But not knowing some of this basic stuff can have a huge impact post-test, and that's where I think we need to go with it. So just reciting it or remembering it for the test, it shouldn't be like that. And kind of my method with learners is you don't need to learn it word for word. If you understand what we mean by three quarters of the breadth of the tyre around the whole circumference, well, then put it in your own words because it will come across that you understand what you mean. And you don't need to be a mechanic, you don't need to know all the ins and outs, but having some basic knowledge of whether a tyre looks safe. So visually being able to just look at it and think, do you know what, that looks a bit low and there's a bit of a bulge or there's a bit of a cut in it. Those are the things that we need to be getting through to our learners, not you just need to recite this. And I don't want this to be a negative thing that there's lots of driving instructors out there that are making it more, I hate this term, but real life as opposed to we just need to do this. But the show and tell questions, I think, are a great in to be able to introduce this type of stuff to learners. Do you find with kind of your lessons, do you use that kind of as a starting point, or are there other kind of ADAS features that you would bring in maybe before you'd start talking about the show and tell?
But I don't necessarily think that that's in order for me. It kind of used to be. So, like, from lesson two, sorry, from lesson one actually, because I always just talk about the head restraint.
Mm,
And one of the things that I would well, still do actually on the first lesson is I tend to drive away, for that first lesson, we'll drive to the training area. I get them to adjust their head restraint on the passenger seat because no one ever adjusts their head restraint on the, I shouldn't say no one, very few people ever do that. So when they sit in that car and before driving, you say, oh, do you want to just adjust that? And then if they look at you stupid, you talk through it. If they go, oh yeah, and then they adjust it, they know what to do. And I think that it then gets out of this mentality of I'm in the driver's seat, I'm on a lesson, I've got to do this to,
mm.
oh no, this is a safety thing in the car. And I think that by doing it from there helps. And so maybe there is a slight formulaic aspect to that, but I used to do it like one of the show me, one of the tell me questions at the start of every lesson. It was something I did. And I still kind of do that a little bit now, but it's not formulaic. It just tends to be what's appropriate at the time. And that could be the very, very simple thing of talking about the fuel gauge and showing you where the arrow's pointing so you know which side the thing's on.
Yeah.
So it's not a safety feature, but it's a technology feature potentially. But my favorite one, if I'm being honest, is the SOS button. I love talking about that. And every time I see someone talk about it, I always seem to find something new. I'm like, how can there be this much new information about this SOS button? But it's little things about like how it connects, who it connects to, and then
Yeah.
like different cars will go straight to the 999 service, others will go to like a reception that'll then redirect you. You press it even if you're not in the crash. If you drive past the crash, you press it so you can report the crash. The fact that it was like 40%, there was a 40%, I might have this figure slightly wrong. I think it was a 40% reduction in uh time for the ambulance getting to the scene when you use the SOS button.
Right.
And when you say stuff like that to them, they're always interested. I
Yeah.
don't think I've had anyone when we're talking about an ADAS feature that has not been interested. Are there any that you are particularly fond of, or that you find have a good reception, or even on the flip side that you struggle to introduce?
I think one that I introduce quite early with learners, as long as it's suitable, is cruise control and speed limiter. Because I think there's still this misunderstanding that we've got to be on a dual carriageway motorway to use it. Where I know not every vehicle is the same. Mine will activate the lowest speed is 20 miles an hour. So recently, I did a training session in Wales, lots of areas in Wales, 20 miles an hour. Really good because I'm not used to traveling at 20 miles an hour. So having that ability to use it and understand how to use it, I think is really important. And so, yeah, cruise control, speed limiter, those are ones that tend to kind of come in quite early. But I think like with the show and tell questions as well, we perhaps not lose sight, but I think if we take roadcraft, so roadcraft's just been updated. So roadcraft is the police driver's handbook or emergency service vehicle handbook, if you want to look at it that way. They've just had a new edition because they've added in a full chapter now on ADAS. But still in there, they talk about powder checks. So these are checks that we would normally do before we're jumping in the vehicle. As a former lorry driver, I used to have to do my vehicle checks before I started them up. So I'd be checking petrol, oil, water, all these things to make sure that it is roadworthy enough. I don't know many people who actually check their vehicle before they go and drive. Even if it is just that 10-second walk round to see what the tyres are like, or is there oil dripping from my vehicle, or is, half of it hanging off. So I think we've got great ADAS features that can help people, but what are the average person, what are they doing just to observe on their vehicle? Actually, is it roadworthy enough?
No, I want to come back to your cruise control for a second because I learned something about me recently because the car I've got now has got adaptive cruise control. The one previously just had cruise control. So for those aren't aware, adaptive will change the speed you're doing according to what's in front of it. And I'm coming up to, I've got my cruise control. I think it was 30 zone. Park car at left. As I get near it, my car starts braking because it senses the
Yeah.
car in front. So for like a minute, I'm cursing my car. It's like stupid cruise control. Or what nonsense is this? And then started thinking, actually, if I'm driving without cruise control and I'm going around that car, would I ease off the gas slightly? I thought, yeah, I would have done. Then it's not the cruise control, it's me. Because
Yeah.
I haven't stepped in, I've just gone, oh, this looks clear. I'm just going to carry on at this speed. And I think, like we spoke a little bit about the people reliance and getting complacent. That was me getting complacent. And I think that it's important to take those points and learn from them. And I have since, and it's something I've spoken up my learners since. But I also want to touch back on that walk around check because this is something I started doing a couple of years ago. It's something I've spoken about quite prominently. I think it's important. I really do. Like you says that I think you called it the powder check. That well, just walk around your car, not the full check. Just getting you. Obviously, you show your learners how to do that as well. Before they get in and walk around, and I think I've only ever had it once or twice where a student has not complained but pushed back slightly, and they've said, "Well, even if I do this on my car on lessons, you're not going to bring me a car that's not fit for road, is it? Are you?" And I thought it's a good point, but this is what the conversation we had. What if the student before you was taking a chunk out of my tire, and today you bump the curb, and I get out and I'm like, you've taken a chunk out of my tire, and
Mhm.
there's no way for you to prove otherwise. Well, if you go and have a look around, you can now prove that, Terry, you got a chunk in that tire. A, I shouldn't be driving it, and B, it's your fault. So I think it's important that we do this. But do you know what? I'm going to put you on the spot slightly, Tom. And I know the answer to this question because I got it written down. But I think it's worth, we should probably mention it because there's a lot of acronyms. What does ADAS stand for?
Oh gosh. Advanced driver something systems.
Assistant systems.
That's it. Yeah.
Well done. That's more than I would have got.
Ah,
But yeah,
that's annoying because I was doing a different project and I was going through the new book of roadcraft and I was looking through that. And I was only doing that this morning, thinking about ADAS. But then when somebody asks that question, mine goes, "Hang on, is it?" I
yeah,
love acronyms. No, I don't. I hate them.
I'm not good at acronyms. All right. I'm going to throw another one out there. And this is something that I don't do or I haven't done, but I think it's something I might start looking more into. And it is the Euro NCAP safety system, the safety rating they have for cars.
Yeah.
And I think that we want to be getting the safest car possible.
Mhm.
And if we can just introduce this to our learners somehow, whether that's on social media, talking about our car is a 5 star in this NCAP road safety system, or however we're doing it, or we mention it on lessons, and then when they pass or they're talking about buying a car, this is something we can mention to them as well to go look up online and see where it fits in this safety scale. Do you think that's well, let me ask you two questions. Is that something you do, and is that something we should be doing?
Yeah, I think it's information gathering, isn't it? As drivers, we're always trying to gather as much information as we can. I think with something like that, we have to live in the real world. I might not always be able to necessarily afford, or the highest NCAP rated car might not be suitable for my needs, so I have to understand this. But knowing where I can find the information so that I can gather that information before I make a decision, because that could be the decision between two vehicles, couldn't it? But are people aware of it? Do people know what it's about? Do people know how to kind of make that decision? Again, it's just all about gathering the right information.
I think it was James Evans, the guy behind First Car and Co-Pilot, that said people used to go out and buy the cheapest car they could, for insurance purposes. He says we want to reframe that to buy the safest car you can afford.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good way to look at it. Is there anything else you want to touch on today?
I think we've covered quite a lot actually.
Yeah. I think the last point I'll make, we've kind of touched on this, it's just making sure you're going above minimum. The example there is the 1.6 on the tread depth. We don't wait till it gets to 1.6 and encourage your learners, I should say, not to wait till it gets 1.6. Talk about how they can change types for then talk about how they can look for the safer vehicle rather than the cheapest vehicle, this kind of stuff. But But yeah, been good. Well, I'm looking forward to see what you get up to on Road Safety Week, Tom.
Excellent.
Right, that's it for another edition of Tom and Terry. As always, we'll look forward to leaving your comments in the comments below this. But Tom, if someone wanted to join the ADINJC, how would they do that?
They can visit our website. They can give us a call. They can find us on social media, as everybody is. And membership is nice and easy to do from there.
Cool. Well, thank you for joining me again today, Tom.
Thanks for having us.